All right, welcome back. This is week 2 science, Wednesday and Thursday. All right, so make sure you've got your reference sheet handy because we will need to use it. All right, we're going to take a look at number 1. It says birds try and control their own body temperature to keep it constant no matter what the temperature is around them. Therefore, birds are warm-blooded, cold-blooded, hibernators, or invertebrates. All right, so we're going to use the process of elimination on this one. We know right here, it even says it at the top of our paper that birds are vertebrates because they have a backbone. So D can't be right. All right, so now we are down to 3 choices. We can also take our reference sheet and go to our bird column or row and go over to the blood type. And a bird is like us. They are warm-blooded. They have the same body temperature all the time. Just like we have, usually we have a temperature around 98.6. If it's a little higher, we might have a fever. If it's a little lower, we might also be sick too. But for the most part, it's around 98.6 most of the time. Same with birds. I'm not sure exactly their body temperature, but it's a constant body temperature. So we now know that number 1 is warm-blooded. Remember, cold-blooded means that the body temperature changes with the outside temperature. And then hibernators, those are like bears, where they go to sleep for a couple of months and then they wake up and rejoin society. All right, number 2, mammals are vertebrates that have scales, gills, feathers, hair, or fur. Okay, so we've got an example right here. It's a squirrel. Looking at the picture, and I know it's kind of hard to tell because it's black and white, but we can all envision a squirrel in our head. Do squirrels have scales? No. Do squirrels use gills to breathe through? No, that's just something that's underwater. Do squirrels have feathers like a bird does? No. We do know that squirrels have fur. They're fuzzy, they have a really bushy tail. So our answer is D. We could have also found that information on our reference sheet. Number 3, which of the following is an example of a mammal? So we have a turtle, parrot, lion, frog. So we're going to look at our reference sheet and think back to what a mammal is. So we know a mammal has hair or fur. So we can go through and cross out any of these. Whoops, this one. Does a turtle have hair or fur? No. Does a parrot have hair or fur? No. They have feathers. A lion definitely has fur. Frog. I haven't seen any hairy frogs, so we're going to say no. So the correct answer is lion. So we're using the process of elimination. Number 4, mammals produce blank for their young. So we have an example here of a mama pig with her piglet. Okay, so number 4, do mammals produce predators, milk, eggs, or grass for their young? So I think one of those is a pretty silly answer. We know that animals don't produce grass, it just grows on its own. So we're going to cross that one out. All right. Do mammals, let's look at eggs. Do mammals lay eggs? Let's look at our birth column here. Mammals at the top, birth. They give live birth except for the platypus. It's the exception to the rule. Platypus, if you guys have watched, what's that show? Phineas and Ferb with Perry the platypus. He's a mammal, except they lay eggs. Okay? So, but for the most part, we're going to say no. All right. Let's look at milk. Do mammals produce milk for their young? Yes, they do. Okay, and mammals produce predators for their young. Well, that doesn't really make much sense. because mammals try and protect their young from predators. So we're going to go with B. Okay, number 5, which of these animals is a reptile? Okay, so just to review, reptiles have rough, dry skin, they're cold-blooded, they use lungs to breathe, they hatch from eggs, they don't drink their mother's milk, and we've got examples of turtle, snake, alligator, crocodile. Okay, so let's take a look here. We've got a tiger. Tigers don't have rough, dry skin. They have hair or fur. They give live birth, and they produce milk for their young, so that makes it a mammal. Elephant. Now, I will say an elephant does have kind of rough, dry skin, but if you ever get up close to an elephant, they actually have hair. It's not totally covering their body, but we know that elephants are warm-blooded. They breathe through lungs, they do give live birth, and they do produce milk. Okay, so elephant is not a reptile. Snake. Snakes have rough, dry skin. They are cold-blooded. They do have lungs. Snakes hatch eggs. We watched a video of that. And they don't produce mother's milk. Mothers don't produce milk for their young. Sorry. And if we look on our reference sheet, an example of a reptile is a snake. And we know the last one is cat. The cat is basically the same as tiger, same family. So we know that cat is not the correct answer. We're going to go with snake. Okay, number 6. What determines how a vertebrate breathes? Okay. So does it matter how big they are? How small they are? What they eat? Or where they live? On land or on water? So if we look at our reference sheet in the breathing column, okay, lungs breathe in oxygen for mammals. We know mammals live, for the very most part, on land, with the exception of dolphins, whales, maybe a manatee. Okay, I think we watched a video on manatees. All right, but even though they live in the water, remember, they still have to come up and breathe air through their blowhole. They have lungs. They don't breathe in oxygen like a fish does from the water. They have to go up to the surface. All right, so let's look at birds. We know birds live on the land, and if they're on the water, they're not under the water, so they still use lungs to breathe. Amphibians, they use gills when they're born because sometimes they're underwater. Frogs can lay eggs under the water, but then they develop lungs later when they grow legs and become an actual frog. Reptiles live on land. They do visit the water, but they don't live in the water. And then fish do live in the water, so they use gills to breathe. So it appears that it doesn't matter the size, whether they're big or small, and it doesn't really matter what they eat. What matters is where they live. If they live underwater all the time, they have to have gills. There we go. Remember, fish don't come up to the surface to breathe. Number 7, most vertebrates, A, lay eggs, B, have live birth, C, breathe using their gills, or D, have feathers. Most vertebrates. Okay, so first let's look at the birth column because it said letter A says lay eggs. So we've got 1 for live birth, 1 for eggs, 2 for eggs, 3 for eggs, 4 for eggs. So 4 different types of animals, vertebrates, lay eggs. Okay, so let's remember that 4. I'm going to put a 4 right here next to lay eggs. Okay, let's count how many give live birth. All right, live birth, So just one. Breathe using their gills. All right, lungs, gills part of the time, lungs, gills. So I would say that's like 1.5. Or we could call it 2. And then have feathers. Well, we know the only one that has feathers is birds. Okay, so which of our numbers is the biggest? It's A. Most vertebrates lay eggs. All right, number 9. What is one number 8. What is one characteristic that birds, reptiles, and mammals all have? Okay, so birds, reptiles, mammals. Let's check and see if they are all cold-blooded. Okay. So blood type for mammal is warm. Blood type for bird is warm. Blood type for reptile is cold. Okay, so those are not the same, so we're going to cross out A. Now we're going to check their breathing. Mammals breathe through lungs. Birds breathe through lungs, as do reptiles. Okay. Oh, whoops, I went down to C. Okay, well, so we know it can't be B because we just learned that they all breathe through lungs. And then D, they lay eggs. All have to lay eggs. Well, we know mammals don't lay eggs. They give live birth. Birds hatch from eggs and reptiles hatch from eggs. So that's not all the same. So it is C. Number 9, what is one characteristic that amphibians and reptiles have in common? Okay, amphibians and reptiles, so that's the green and the purple. They are cold-blooded. Let's check that. Cold-blooded amphibian, cold-blooded reptile. Check. We're going to go ahead and check the others just to make sure. They have live birth. Okay, well, if we look right here, amphibians hatch from eggs, as do reptiles, so that's not right. They only live in water. Okay, well, we know that reptiles live on the land because they use lungs to breathe, and amphibians eventually use lungs to breathe, so they don't live in the water only, so that's not right. And the last one we know is not right. We just talked about it because if they don't breathe through gills, they have to breathe through lungs. So we were right with letter A. All right, number 10, which of the following type of vertebrates have live birth? Fish, amphibians, mammals, or birds? So we use our reference sheet, we go to the birth column, and we look, live birth, egg, 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 egg. Mammals are the only ones, so C. All right, here is Thursday's work. Number 1 says scientists classify animals with backbones into what type of category? Okay, well, we know the word for an animal with a backbone. It's right here at the top of our paper. And it's at the top of our reference sheet. It is vertebrate. All right, number 2, vertebrates are divided by scientists into how many classes? I think we had this on Monday or Tuesday's paper. Okay. I probably should have wrote the word class right here instead of animal type, but I hadn't used that word in class, so I didn't want to confuse you. But if we look at the reference sheet, let's count how many different animal types we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, and fish makes 5. So there are 5 different types of invertebrates. So B. Number 3, vertebrates are divided into 5 classes, which include fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and then they left one out. So we look at our reference sheet. They said fish, amphibian, reptile, bird. They left out mammal, which is letter C. Number 4, what type of animal controls its own body temperature and tries to keep its insides at a constant temperature? Would that be cold-blooded animals, warm-blooded animals, reptiles, or all animals? All right, well, looking at our reference sheet in the blood category, we're looking for constant body temperature. All right, so that would be, we see right here, warm-blooded means constant body temperature. Constant body temperature. Cold-blooded means that the temperature of their blood changes with the outside. So if they were in the snow, their body temperature would be very cold. If they're laying out on the concrete in the middle of July, it's going to be pretty hot. All right, so we figured out our answer. Animals that control its own body temperature and keep it constant are warm-blooded animals such as mammals and birds. Number 5, the internal temperature of blank depends on the outside temperature around them. Okay, so this is the exact opposite. We either have warm-blooded animals or we have cold-blooded animals. Letter A. Number 6, what covers the bodies of most fish? Okay, it's taken a picture of a fish's body covering and kind of enlarged it so we can see. Do those look like scales, feathers, fur, or fins? Well, if we don't know, we can use our reference sheet because it tells us the answer. We go in our first column for body covering, go down to fish. It is covered in scales. Okay, number 7. How do fish breathe? A, using their gills, B, using their lungs, C, through their mouth, or D, through their eyes. That's kind of weird. Okay. So they're showing us a picture of these little slats or slits on the side of a fish, and they open, kind of like a vent. If you've ever seen on your house, every house that has a dryer should have a dryer vent for all the lint and hot air to go outside of. And sometimes they kind of open and close. Same concept with gills. They open and then they close again, pushing water in and out so they can pull the oxygen out of it. So I say all of that to say that we know that fish use gills because if we use our reference sheet right here, gills breathe in oxygen in the water. They have to use a filtering system. Number 8, most fish have live births. True or false? Okay, fish go across to birth. They hatch from eggs, except sharks. Sharks actually do give live birth, but that doesn't make them a mammal. They live underwater 100% of the time. They use gills, and they don't produce milk for their young. It just so happens that they give live birth. So, no, most fish do not have live births. So this is false. Number 9, the body temperature of fish is cold when the water around them is cold and warm when the water around them is warm, which means, I think we're getting to be experts on this. That means that fish are cold-blooded. Okay? And if you didn't know, you can use your reference sheet. Last one, number 10, amphibians such as blank are covered with smooth skin. So it's kind of hard to tell in this black and white picture, but that is a picture of a frog. Okay, we know frogs are typically kind of wet and slimy. If their skin gets too dry, they might die. I know we looked at some pictures. Now, I think toads can be dry. Frogs and toads are kind of like cousins, but frogs have to have some kind of moisture on their skin to stay alive. So, we're going to circle frogs. Do worms have smooth skin? Yes, but a worm doesn't have a backbone, so it's not a vertebrate, so we can't answer that. Fish, they are kind of smooth and sometimes they are slimy, but they're not an amphibian. And then snakes are smooth, they're dry, and they're a reptile. So frog is our best answer.